When you are asked to review an electric scooter, your task is to answer a simple question. Does the fun justify its cost? My name is Ian Buckley and this is the Make Use of review of the Kugoo S1 foldable electric scooter, which is definitely a lot of fun. Now, these kind of scooters have got more popular in recent years as the technology has improved and the price has come down. At $339.99, the Kugoo S1 is very cheap. Its direct competitor, the Xiaomi M365, costs a little bit more, and the Kugoo S1 claims a few extra things which it thinks gives it the edge over the Xiaomi. However, a direct comparison between the two probably isn't worth your while. What is worth knowing is it fun? And can you use it practically? Can you commute with it? These things are being marketed as last mile commuting tools that you can keep in the boot of your car. Is this something that you would actually use? So before we get into whether this is a practical commuting tool or just an expensive toy, spoilers, it's both, let's look at the specifications. The heart of the Kugoo S1 is a 350 watt motor which is driven by a 36 volt 6 amp hour battery. Both of the wheels are 8.5 inches and made of some kind of hardened rubber, and they are non-pneumatic, which means there's no air in the tyres. Luckily there is suspension both front and back, which is designed to give you a slightly less bumpy ride than you'd imagine with no air in the tyres. And there is also a main hinge in the middle, which is where you will find the charge port for charging the device. In terms of portability, there are 3 different operating heights for the handlebars, and you fold it down to the lowest height before you fold it. And possibly the coolest thing about this scooter is the way the handlebars fold inwards. There are 2 little buttons that you can pull out, fold down, and then fold the scooter flat, which give it a very small profile. There is a color OLED segmented display which shows you the speed that you were going, as well as the battery charge that you have left, and it gives you a choice of distance traveled or distance for this trip or time elapsed. You can change that mode using a button on the OLED display, and there are 4 other buttons for power on, for speed, for the LED lights, and my favorite, the piezo buzzer horn. In terms of braking, the S1 has a regenerative magnet brake on the front and a stomped brake on the back. When the S1 is folded up, I measured it at 94 by 34 by 18.5 centimeters. That is 37 by 13 by 7 inches. And which is very small. You'll fit that in any car boot, and once you unfold it, it has 3 separate operating heights. And this is something that not every other scooter at this price range has, which is great. At the lowest height, it's perfect for children. At height 2 and 3, it was suitable for me. For reference, I'm 180 centimeters tall, which is just 5'9", I believe. So no matter how tall or small you are, you'll probably be able to use this scooter. There was no unboxing for this video because there really isn't anything to unbox. You get the scooter in the box and you get a power brick and a very simple manual. The power brick takes around 4 hours to go from completely empty to fully charged, and it has a simple red-green LED indicator on it to show whether it's still charging or fully charged. That's it in terms of accessories you get with this. However, almost every aspect of it is available for purchase from Kugoo if you need to replace something, which is quite a nice thing, as many things these days are you buy them, it breaks, and it's done. Finally, this scooter has an IP54 rating, which means that it might survive a little bit of rain, it might survive getting a bit of dust on it, but I would treat this like you would any other electronic device. I know that we're used to having smartphones these days that you can get wet or throw on the floor and all this kind of stuff, but this is something that you need to treat like an old school electronic device, and that's kind of okay. The one thing I haven't mentioned so far is the weight, and that's because I wanted to dedicate an entire segment to it, as for me this is something that is not just a problem with this scooter, but a problem with budget electric scooters overall. So, the Kugoo S1 weighs 11 kilograms, that's around 22 pounds. Now, that's not the heaviest in its class. In fact, that's actually quite light for an electric scooter of this type, but it's still not particularly light. Now, I'm not winning any strongman competitions over here, but I wouldn't consider myself particularly weak either. And even taking this down the 2 flights of stairs from my apartment to the street level, I found to be fairly unpleasant. Not just because of its general weight, but because if you're trying to hold it in one hand, it is very front heavy. Now, I can't imagine children or people who aren't capable of lifting heavy weights being able to move this around very easily, which is a bit of a problem in my eyes for a portable electric scooter. Now, as I said, this isn't just a problem with the Kugoo, and in fact, again, going back to its direct competitor, this is 1.5 kilos lighter than the Xiaomi M365. But it is worth bearing in mind that unless you are just putting this in your boot and taking it out again, or keeping it on ground level, before you get to use it, you're going to have a workout. So, specifications aside, how does it ride, how fast does it go? They're the really important questions, aren't they? Well, Riding the S1 is entirely intuitive. There was no point where I didn't really know what to do. Unfolding it is easy. In fact, unfolding it is easy and folding it is quite hard. That's something we'll get onto in a minute. But the ride is fine. It's on a smooth surface. You press go, it accelerates at a fairly fast rate, but at no point did I feel like it was going to get away from me. And I tested the speeds of it. This claims a top speed of 30 kilometers per hour. I started on speed 1 and I got 17 kilometers per hour, which is around 10 miles an hour. On speed 2, I clocked 22 kilometers per hour, and on speed 3, I clocked 28. Now, bearing in mind I weigh just over 80 kilograms, I find that to be pretty good, actually, and the claimed speed of 30 kilometers per hour is almost certainly true. Bear in mind that these speeds were measured using the onboard speedometer, but I did set up a very rudimentary speed test using a ruler and a couple of sticks, and it seems like those speeds are accurate. My weight is just over 80 kilograms, and you will have a vastly different experience to I do, depending on your weight. It's worth mentioning at this point that the Kugoo says that it can take a weight of up to 120 kilograms, which is 20 kilograms heavier than any other scooter at around this price range, which is a good thing. This is something that I didn't really have the opportunity to test, but it does feel like it's got a fairly solid build, so I would think that this is also true. Other factors that will affect how fast any scooter goes is the surface that you use it on and whether that surface is flat or inclined. Well, as you're hopefully seeing right now, I tested this scooter out using a relatively bumpy incline, and it didn't really seem to struggle particularly. Of course, it wasn't that fast going up it, but then again, I wouldn't expect it to be. I was quite impressed, actually. That hill, I haven't measured it, but it's steep enough to be difficult on a bike, and for the scooter to make it, I thought was kind of cool. When you are riding the Kugoo S1, you will feel relatively well balanced, and this makes sense because all of the weight is at the bottom. At no point did I feel like I had to ride it a certain way, although I did spend quite a lot of time crouched over like a drag racer or kind of slaloming left and right. Neither of these things are compulsory, that's just because I can't help myself. The main question, is this thing fun? The answer is yes, it's a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, of course it is, it's an electric scooter. Is it practical? That is difficult to answer, and that brings me on to the quality of the ride. So as I mentioned at the start, there is no air in the tyres on this scooter, and while there is suspension, I didn't find it to be enough. Now let me clarify, I've used this on a variety of surfaces, and these things aren't meant for particularly rough surfaces, but if you're going to use it in a city, you're not always going to get an entirely smooth surface to ride on. I found that the suspension, while I'm sure it was doing something, when I did go over bumpy ground, I felt every single bump, and after my time with the scooter and testing it, I still have a little bit of aching in my wrists and my feet. Now for someone like me, that's not a problem. I'm on this thing for fun, but if you're going to use this every single day for your commute, you might miss the air in those tyres. So for an electric scooter that is incredibly fun, that can be used in certain urban environments, that is pretty damn fast, you're going to want to know what the brakes are like. Well, I had a really odd experience with my time with the Kugoo S1 with the brakes, because I did a little bit of reading up before it arrived, and other people were saying that the brakes weren't particularly good. So that's what my expectation was. Now, the first time I got up to top speed and pressed the brake came on so fast that I almost flew over the front of it, and the teeth nearly came out of my face. It was incredible. I had almost an out-of-body experience. I stopped so quickly. Surprisingly not dead yet. The thing is, that changed very quickly. I adjusted to how quickly the brake worked, and then over that day, the brake got softer and softer and softer to the point that I could push the brake all the way on, and then I would slow down to a stop at a relatively nice pace. One final oddity when it comes to the ride is the cruise control. Now, the Kugoo S1 doesn't have a cruise control, at least it doesn't mention one in the manual, and most of the time you're using it, you don't have one. However, the first time you turn the scooter on, if you hold the accelerator down and you reach the top speed, it will maintain that top speed until you press the brake. But once you press the brake once, you will never have cruise control again until you turn the scooter off and on again. Now, the Kugoo S1 is incredibly similar to a couple of other scooters at around about this price range that are different brands. I have a feeling that this is just a no-label scooter that Kugoo have bought and changed by putting their own display on, and maybe a few different things here and there. This is maybe a firmware hiccup left over from another scooter. I know for a fact there is another scooter that uses this exact model that has a cruise control as one of its primary features. So maybe there's something there. Again, to me, this wasn't a big deal, but if you're opening the scooter for the first time and you're wondering why you're not stopping, yeah, there's a hidden cruise control there, which is kind of crazy. Now, one of the primary draws of this scooter is how small it folds up. If you're, again, using this in your car, I can't really think of any car where this thing wouldn't fit in. It's really small and compact when folded up, and were it lighter, it would be perfect to carry. The way that you fold it has a definite knack to it, however. I couldn't fold it at first. I opened it up, assumed I'm techie, I know what I'm doing. I couldn't. I had to look online, and when I had looked online, it became a lot simpler. The combination of pushing the bars forward while you push down the very strong spring at the hinge is difficult to get used to. However, it is entirely forgivable because what you don't want is this thing folding up on you at 30 kilometers per hour. As I mentioned before, the handlebars on the Kugoo S1 are incredibly cool. If you unfold it, you just fold them out and let go because they pop in automatically. And to fold them down again, there are little buttons which are kind of recessed back from the thumb paddles that you use to control the S1. And those buttons are A, very difficult to press when you're going, I had that fear in my mind, and B, quite easy to press in. Now, despite the fact that this folding mechanism seems like it would be quite flimsy, at no point did I feel like there was any flimsiness there, and at no point did it feel like a weak point in the scooter. Now, the battery on this scooter promises a range of 30 kilometers, and I believe it probably can deliver that. I didn't get that performance, but I wouldn't expect to, because I'm probably a little heavier than the people that this scooter is targeted at. Also, I was expecting that speed 1 would be incredibly slow and boring so that they could claim this range of 30 kilometers. Actually, the first speed is fine, and for most uses in a city, I'd probably use speed 1. In my experience, I was switching between speed 1, 2, and 3 on multiple surfaces, and I drained the battery entirely twice. Once at 15 kilometers, and that had been a fun day, and twice at 22 kilometers. Now, given that I was using different speed levels, which use a vastly different amount of charge, I'm really impressed that it made 22 kilometers. And again, if you are on the right surface, if you are the right weight, and if you are somewhere that isn't very cold, you can probably expect 30 kilometers out of this scooter, which is not what I was expecting to find. So I think that's more or less everything you need to know about the ride and the day-to-day operation of using the Kugoo S1. And at $339.99, you've probably got an idea in your head as to whether you could justify buying yourself one. Now, there are a couple of other quirks. I've already mentioned the cruise control, which is a bit of a quirk. Less a quirk, but just something I found interesting. The LED lights, the light on the back is a brake light, and it is also a visibility light. So when you have the light on the front on, the back light will continuously flash, which is for visibility, for your safety. The front lights are an array of 36 white LEDs. Now, in my opinion, these LEDs are possibly too bright for visibility and not quite bright enough to light your path at night. They are good enough without a doubt, but I wouldn't necessarily trust myself going at 30 kilometers per hour in the dark with just these 36 LEDs as my light source. Your experience may differ. One other quirk is the kickstand. So the Kugoo S1 has a kickstand which will allow you to stand it up and take nice photos of it or whatever you want to do. However, this kickstand was clearly added afterwards as an afterthought. The bottom of the Kugoo S1 is a nice flat shape which is perfect for storing in places, and the kickstand is just screwed onto the side of it and sits proud of the bottom so it does not sit flat on the floor. Not only that, the metal kickstand sits proud of this nice flat bit, which means the first time I put it down on my wooden floor, it scratched the floor. This kickstand was obviously put in there as an afterthought. I just took mine off and I haven't missed it whatsoever. There is no smartphone app for the Kugoo S1, and I don't see this as any major loss. I don't really understand the point of a smartphone app for a smart scooter. The OLED display should tell you everything that you need to know. So in closing, should you get a Kugoo S1? Well, the Kugoo S1 is bumpy, at times terrifying, but a hell of a lot of fun. And at $339.99, if you want to get one for fun, you can probably justify that purchase. As a commuting tool, it's actually fairly practical. The range will allow you to go from A to B. It is a bit heavy, but if you're going to keep this in the boot of your car, that isn't a problem. The one thing that I really miss is air in the tyres, and as I mentioned before, its direct competitor does have that. That is something worth bearing in mind, but the Kugoo S1 promises foldability, great range, and great speed, and it delivers on all three. So I hope this review was useful for you. We have reviews like this every week on the Make Use of YouTube channel, along with giveaways, tech tips, and tutorials, so consider giving us a subscription. There is also a written article on the Make Use of website which covers this review. But for now, thank you all so much for watching. Take care.